Behind the Leaf discusses cannabis in terms of education, history, culture, policy, and advocacy. It is geared for adults only. If you are not an adult, come back when you are.
Where is it, man?
Hey, what do you got there?
Well, I'm actually looking at the second episode of Behind the Leaf. My name is Steven. Thank you for tuning in. I'm excited to show you what I got. So you know what? For today's episode, and what I got in my little bag of tricks for you guys is a visit to Abstrax Labs, who is an LBCA member here on the west side. I got a community guest interview with Eric Foster E-Fizz, which is a receptionist at Chronic Pain Relief Center. I have a interview with Eric Goepel, military veteran and founder of the Veterans Cannabis Coalition. I have a industry interview with Stacy Louks, who is a veteran cannabis entrepreneur and someone who is proud to be a woman leading the cannabis industry. And last but not least, I have a backpack giveaway, back to school drive with the LBCA, AOC7, and the Puente Association. I am super excited to bring you the second episode. Grab your joints, grab your bongs, eat that edible, microdose, don't eat the whole thing, and join me on this episode of Behind the Leaf. And always, use hand sanitizer.
Hi, I'm Max Kobe, CEO and visionary at Abstrax. I'm originally from San Clemente, born and raised. We started Abstrax back in 2017 with my brother and my business partner of 15 years, Jack Pete. Kevin is our CSO. Jack helps us run all our operations as the cultivator of the group, and I'm the visionary. What makes Abstrax different is our obsessive passion for cannabis research, innovation, and pioneering cannabis terpene profiles. Really what helps a brand differentiate their products in the market and build consumer trust is their ability to research and innovate new product applications and formulations that create predictable, repeatable, and high quality experiences for consumers to enjoy. Why we developed Abstrax as a company is a really good question to address. So we're looking at this industry emerging, and there's nothing that we're more passionate about than helping to normalize the cannabis industry and explore the benefits that it has to offer the world at large. And cannabis is the most abundant source of terpenes in the entire world, yet research has been restricted on this valuable plant. And so when we really wanted to start this company, we said, what can we do to empower the industry to create real value for our partners? And we knew that there was a lot of money. I've never met so many billionaires before in my lifetime, right? And they're all really excited and want to be involved in cannabis and be a part of the movement. And so there was a lot of money coming into it. That can buy a lot of real estate, that can buy licensing, but what it can't buy is expertise in product differentiation. So we knew that there was going to be a development curve for these companies to go from start to finish to be a manufacturer being able to create a finished product. So that's where we started, was at the end. We knew that by researching cannabis helping to identify these valuable compounds that create these unique and differentiated experiences with what we wanted to focus on so that we can help a brand create real value and differentiation on the shelf. And so for us, the barriers to entry were much different from other companies. My brother is an organic chemist that went to UCSB. When he graduated, he went to go work for a leading research material lab. He then was recruited by one of the largest cannabis companies in California, developed their first product and helped scale their manufacturing up to 80,000 units a week. And that's not something that's easily taught, learned. He actually worked with manufacturers, including ETS, CTS, and other people to actually develop and scale up their manufacturing processes. And he's been able to win over 15 cannabis cups with that experience. Most testing labs today are testing between 20 and 40 terpenes. We are identifying and quantifying over 400 terpenes and aroma compounds in every cannabis sample that we analyze, and we've actually created over 120 testing standards for our terpenes. So when I explain the combination of terpenes and cannabinoids to consumers, right, or even people in the industry, it's really just plants two things. It's cannabinoids and it's terpenes. If cannabinoids were your gas pedal, that'd be your THC. How high am I gonna get? That is modulated by your steering wheel, which is your terpenes. So when I smoke a jack, I feel happy and uplifted and energetic. Green Crack is my favorite strain because I can work all night long, right, and I'm neurotic. Why is that? That's the combination of terpenes and cannabinoids working with my endocannabinoid system, and I'm different from you. They all affect us differently, but once we find what we like, we have a tendency to want to go feel that again.
Hi, I'm Kevin Kobe, CSO here at Abstrax Labs. This is a manufacturing and R&D state-of-the-art facility for processing cannabis and studying cannabis. Here I'm going to take you on a tour and see what makes this place tick. Here we have a lot of security measures to keep everyone safe. We have a Type 7 manufacturing license, so we can do hydrocarbon extraction and ethanol extraction, any extraction that uses solvents, as well as any research that involves solvents, which is very important to us. This is where we start our process. So here in material storage, we have large walk-in freezers that are about -10 Fahrenheit. We store our cannabis, our fresh frozen, trim, what have you in these freezers. Keeps them fresh, keeps their terpene content high, which is what we're after. When we go to process our cannabis, we break it up, we pack it into socks, which are chemically inert for our extraction process, and then we chill them down to -80. Once we chill everything, we bring it over to extraction. This is our extraction room. This is a C1D2 environment in here and a C1D1 environment in here. What that means is that we don't have any electrical in this room. Everything's powered by utilities that are plumbed into this room one way or another. Usually those utilities are air, clean dry air, refrigerant, water, nitrogen, list a few. It's important that we have a C1D1 atmosphere, and it's important that we have all of our utilities plumbed into this room so we have no possibility of having a spark. We don't want any sparks because the solvents that we work with are flammable, and so we want to mitigate all of those risks. The entire room has been designed for catastrophic failure in the event that everything explodes at time is equal to 0, so that everything can go out instantaneously and there's no possibility of a fire. All of our solvents stored in this jacketed tank here. It's at -60. When we start our runs, we're going to move all that solvent into these material chambers that hold our cannabis. Our solvents boil at, depending on the solvent, -42 or 0 degrees Fahrenheit. All that gets distilled. It dumps into what we call our expansion chamber. Our expansion chamber is filled with desiccant so we can separate any water content from our solvent, so that every single run we replenish our solvent, we rewash our solvent every single run, so we have the same extraction efficacy every run. After we're done extraction, we move all our product over into post-processing.
Hi everyone, my name is Jack Pete. I'm with Abstrax Labs here in Long Beach, California. I'm the COO of the company. Here we do Type 7 manufacturing. We've all kind of been in the cannabis industry our whole life. Me personally, it's been a passion, and I've enjoyed consuming cannabis from a young age, and I've done just about everything in the industry, but I think growing has been a good passion of mine. In the early days, I just love watching the plant grow and you know, the terpenes that come off of the plant, you know, especially when you pop new seeds. That's really exciting to me. So that's why I'm excited to be working here, because we get to work with all these different growers and get to handle all these different strains and see and smell these different aromas and profiles that come from cannabis, which again is one of the most diverse sources of terpenes of any plant on the planet. You know, we have some that taste like oranges and pineapples and anywhere from the OG Kush with the gas, you know, and discovering what those molecules are, which is exciting because that is something we do here, is we actually study the plant specifically for its terpenes, its flavor and aroma compounds. And why that's important is because most people are just looking at, you know, what are the cannabinoids? And cannabinoids are always important. They're gonna get you your high. Terpenes are like the steering wheel for your high. So it's gonna dictate whether you feel calm or uplifted, anti-inflammatory, stress relief. There's a lot of different entourage effects that come from the flavor and aroma compounds. So here at Abstrax Labs, we have specific analytical equipment to look at just the flavor and aroma compounds. And we've already been able to discover some really cool stuff, including the gas. So for us, the holy grail was to discover what is the gas, what is that flavor, what is that compound. And we were able to crack that code within a couple of months of being operating, which we thought it would take years, to be quite honest. That's exciting because now we can bring that into other product formulations, whether it's a vape or an edible or a beverage or a tincture, a pill. There's even the flower itself. You can re-infuse the flower. So it's a lot of exciting possibilities that we can use these ingredients for, and not to mention the medicinal benefit. You know, we could stumble across the next cure for cancer, or who knows what other ailment we may be able to cure with just these flavor and aroma compounds that we're discovering. So what does cannabis mean to me? Well, cannabis is a plant, number one. It's a very unique plant, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love it so much, is just my experience with growing, especially from seeds. You know, when you pop a seed, you sometimes don't know if it's going to be good or if it's going to be male or female. You might not get any females. You might get hermaphrodites. You might get a strain that just doesn't taste very good. But sometimes you get those magical strains that pop out of seeds that just blow your socks off, and your senses and aromas are just like enticed by this strain. And I think that's happened to me more than once, you know, especially now with more and more breeders. There's more exotic strains coming out, and really that's what excites me, is just figuring out what are these compounds, how do we make them better, how do we reintroduce them to other products, and really just keep growing the plant to be, you know, its full potential.
When we started our research program, we created the Growers Collection. The Growers Collection started off as a partnership with industry leaders who have helped to develop modern popular genetics. And our goal was to standardize these profiles and authenticate them with these original cultivators. So we started off by partnering up with Josh D, Dan Hare, Sherbinsky, and a number of other prominent cultivators in the state. It started off being a very exclusive program that required a ton of research and time between the farm and our lab to really identify the unique characteristics of these plants and to create our analytics and ultimately our program that we can use to educate consumers on what makes them unique. We ended up developing what we like to call the Certificate of Authenticity. This is a brochure version. And what you'll find is that we've gone through explaining our research and what a 3D metabolite fingerprint is. We've actually listed the top 48 compounds by mass using the standards that we've created. We've actually identified over 10 different terpene peaks that collude themselves in existing standards today. So we don't use compliance testing labs for measuring any type of terpenes anymore. We do everything in-house. There's actually a lot of terpenes that are on this page that have never been discovered before. We've discovered over 30 new terpenes in cannabis that were never known about. And then what we do is, and really the most important part about this is distilling this information down to a really digestible, in a digestible way for consumers to enjoy. And so we've created like a baseball card for a grower, right? And basically what we can say is, what is the chemical analysis of this profile beyond just THC? We know that the THC of this plant is 30%. We know that the terpenes now are 4%. And we know within that terpenes, how much of it is terpenes versus aroma compounds, and how do those impact the sensory panel. The sensory panel is how does it taste and how does it make me feel. And so we've broken that down. Loudness. We love this. How loud is it, right? That's what we all know, right? We're scientists too, we can have fun. We love cannabis, right? When someone goes to the store today, they can't smell the cannabis. How do they know what the quality of that cannabis is? How do we know that the cultivator did a good job cultivating it? Well, if the cultivator created a quality standard, then measured the total aroma, which we call loudness, by assigning a weighted score to all 400 aroma compounds and terpenes we discovered, we can now create a weighted average for how smelly that cannabis will be. And we can actually create a degradation curve to tell you in 3 months, how is the aroma of that plant going to be? But if they stored it correctly and they break apart that nug, it should still be reminiscent of what Josh D created to be his OG Kush and that experience that he wants you to develop. So now when a consumer is going to a store and wants to buy an OG Kush varietal, they can now base their decision on THC, total aroma or loudness, total gas, the fruit concentration if that's desirable to them. And at the end of the day, we've taken our research and we've created a sensory panel for everything. So now I can explain to a consumer that based on the chemical makeup of this flower and the research that's been done on these terpenes and these compounds in here, we can predict that the effects of this strain may be calming and uplifting, that the flavor of this profile would be sour and more spicy. And we've also explained the strain balance. So again, if it's a more complex strain profile, like something Sherbinski did with Baccio or Acai, it's gonna be far more complex. It's gonna have a lot more flavor notes to it and complexity to it. Whereas Josh D's profile, despite there being 310 aroma compounds in here, 95% of it's in the top, 3 compounds, which is myrcene, limonene, and pinene. So this is really, what we're trying to create to help empower the industry to educate consumers, standardize cannabis profiles, ultimately create a menu for consumers.
Depending on the product that comes out of extraction and the product that we want to make with it, it goes into different parts of post-processing. Here, we've built a very versatile post-processing center. If we want to make shatter, they go into these ovens where we cast them into sheets of shatter. If we want to make sauce or diamonds or sugar or butter or anything to that capacity, we bring them to these ovens over here. These are our purging ovens. In this oven, you'll see we're doing a separation of some super sour diesel. During this process, we take the live resin extract, which is derived from fresh frozen material, will allow the THCA to crystallize out in its purest form, and then we'll separate all the cannabis-derived terpenes from the THCA crystals. That's the process that's happening here. Immediately after this process, we'll be purging both to remove any residual solvent. So when you have a pure product with no residual solvent, that's as pure as could be. If a product does not come up to our quality specs, we will recycle that product into pure THC oil. And what we do then is we separate the terpenes from the cannabinoids and we turn it into straight THC. This is our winterization room, or our post-processing room. This is a C1, D2 environment. So we're able to use any other solvent besides butane and propane. We use these solvents for different purification steps. We have a winterization going right now. We have recollection going right now. We have a couple different processes that happen in this room. This room can do ethanol extraction, homogenization, as well as separation of low boiling point solvents, which is ethanol for this example. Yeah, so here we're mixing crude extract with ethanol so we can remove all of the fats and lipids. This is our pen filling machine. This will fill a cartridge, cap a cartridge, and dispense a cartridge back into its case pack. This machine's automated. It can fill anywhere from 700 to 900 units per hour. It depends if it's a half gram or full gram. Over here it will fill based on volume. Over here it'll cap. And then over here it'll dispense the cart back into the case pack. It will not run if my hand is actually in the machine because we have sensors right here. Everything is calibrated. There are so many different carts in the market that when people give us a new cart, we will usually 3D print new blocks for them to accommodate their contracts. Something that makes us unique over everybody else in this market is our capacity for doing research on terpenes and cannabis. We have discovered more terpenes, we have quantified and qualified more terpenes than any other lab that exists today, especially when it pertains to cannabis. We can detect anywhere from 450 different specifically aroma compounds in people's cannabis strains. What we've built, which has taken us 2 years to build this instrument, is about a very sophisticated nose. We can detect down to parts per quadrillion, which is a recent advancement in analytical technology. This is our formulation room. This is where we perform small and large scale formulations for a variety of customers. If people want samples, this is where we make them. If people want batches of 10,000, this is where we make them. This is also where we R&D new formulations that we've created in our lab in Irvine. It is small but very efficient.
We all got into this industry because we're extremely passionate about cannabis and sharing these benefits with the entire world. This industry reminds me a lot of the microbrew industry. Had the lowest failure rate because everybody supported each other. In this industry, it's no different. And I believe that we need to support each other, our passion for the plant, sharing that passion with consumers, and ultimately never losing sight of quality.
Here at Abstrax, our number one objective is to be the number one cannabis flavor house in the world. Our primary objective is to hone in on cannabis terpene science and botanical terpene science. We want to be the best at understanding cannabis, its flavor, its aroma, and how to recreate that and reverse engineer that to offer that to our partner brands, the people that work with us, and the MSOs that are across the United States and that are budding across the world.
I just want to say thank you to the LBCA and all the support you guys have given us. Again, it's been a great pleasure to work with everyone in this community and all the great things we're doing, not just for the cannabis businesses, but for the community. You know, all the social equity pieces and things that we do to help better the city here in Long Beach. And again, I'm just really proud to be a part of that and a proud supporter.
Well, my name is Eric. A lot of people might know I'm from Long Beach, born and raised. I think I started smoking cannabis around the age of 15. I had a few buddies, they would leave at lunchtime every day. I'd be like, well, where are these dudes? They come back all happy, smiling, giggling, you know, and I'm like, you know, I was still kind of L7 back then. So one day I just said, I'm gonna go with them. They left at lunch. They said, you gonna come with us? They was like shocked, like, you know, you gonna come with us? I'm like, yeah. So we went. Now, mind you, I went to a school here in Long Beach, Woodrow Wilson. Ooh, go Bruins, yeah. So they had these apartments across the street from the school. We would go in this alley over here. So I went to the alley with him. My buddy pulled out this, he pulled out a doobie, you know, because everybody wasn't no blunts. It was just straight zigzags. And my buddy put out this doobie. It was fat as your thumb, you know, and we was all about 5 of us in the alley hitting it. Oop, oop, I hit it. Didn't cough, hit it, coughed. When I coughed, that was it. I got high as I ever been in my life. And that was a wrap. That was just I fell in love with cannabis then. You know, I fell in love. No, I smoked. I've been smoking, actually I'm 48 now, so I've been smoking for a while. Me personally, how I got into cannabis, I was 2010. I was going to different dispensaries and different things like that. I was living in Wilmington at the time, so I would always come to Long Beach for my cannabis. Used to come to Chronic, and you know, it was It was only like 3 people there, you know what I'm saying, helping everybody. It was like Greg was checking people in, and Hefty was bud tending, and you know, different things like that. And I would come every day, just bug them. Bugging. I bugged them so much they gave me a job. They gave me a job. I bugged them so much they gave me a job. They needed some help, and they had me, and they called me up, and that's how I got there. Did I say I worked reception? I didn't want nobody to know I was a receptionist at the desk. No, it's all good. I loved it, because then I was able to get my rec for free. You know what I'm saying? Because I worked at the dispensary. So it was like something I could never imagine, you know, because I come from an era you go to a weed house. People were selling weed out their house, cannabis out their house. You know, you would go, and I, believe it or not, I knew millions of spots. If this person didn't have it, I knew, all right, let's go over here. You know what I'm saying? I was the one everybody came to, you know. But so when I actually got to dealing with chronic, it was something different. You know, it was like, wow, you know, I never seen it getting weed in a medicine jar. I was like intrigued, like, whoa, this shit is sick. Because believe it or not, when we first started smoking it, it wasn't like now it's a plethora of marijuana. I mean, different kinds, back in my day, when I first started, you had 2 kinds, and I'm not lying. Those of you that know, that's my age, they know. We had Cess is the best, and we had this light green, you know what I'm saying? It would be called Hawaiian, whatever they wanted to call it. Snoop ended up calling it Chronic, you know what I'm saying? That was it. That was $20 and $10. That was it. They sold 50 bags. You know what I'm saying? It was, but that's how it was. It was just incredible for me to be working at a dispensary. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Then I started making all the shake and the pre-rolls. You know what I'm saying? That's why I can't stand Granddaddy Perp right now, because I had to grind so much of that stuff up that I smell it to this day, and I don't like nothing with perps in. Actually, in 2012, that was like the saddest time ever. You know, I think it was, you know, a lot of people didn't have jobs and we were stuck. But what we did do when we shut down, we immediately got out there and hit the pavement to get signatures. To get this, you know, we initially wanted it for safe access. That's what we was out there fighting for. So we had headquarters, you know, getting signatures. I was out there in front of other dispensaries getting signatures. You know what I'm saying? It was fun. I ain't gonna lie. I had fun doing it. Got to meet a lot of council people and a lot of different people in politics, which was cool. Then we had to check all the signatures. Oh, that was a whole nother story. Like I said, we was doing it just for safe access to get the shops back open. It's a good industry. I feel it's gonna be here for a long time. You got unions, you got benefits, it's incredible. It's incredible. But by me being a union member and being a part of the cannabis industry, it's amazing, because it's new for them, it's new for us. So we all learning at the same time. We're all learning the process, and we're all growing. I mean, to have health insurance, you know, and it's amazing. 501k in the future, you know what I'm saying? You know, 401 or whatever you want to call it, I don't know, but it's good, it's a good thing. You feel protected? Yes, I do. I feel very protected. Now I consume cannabis for a lot of different reasons, because for one, I have had a few injuries. You know, I had a gunshot wound to my leg, upper torso, my stomach, this, all that. Wore a colostomy bag for like 9 months, which was, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It helps with my anxiety. I don't know why I have anxiety. Maybe because of everything that's going on in the world, and, you know, just different little things. It helps with depression. True story, if I'm ever mad, I get real upset, I go smoke me a joint, I do calm down and think about it, my head come to my senses and be like, oh shit, what was I getting mad over that for? That was, so it helps a lot. It helps a lot, it does. People come in with numerous issues as far as medically and mentally and just all kinds. Physically, like I said, they come in, we got people come in walkers, wheelchairs, prosthetic pieces, deaf. But like I said, you see all kinds. We get people all ages, all age groups, 21 up, you know. And I mean, I see a lot of elderly people, which I'm glad. You know what I'm saying? It's mean they getting rid of that stigma about cannabis being, oh, It's a gateway drug. You're gonna do all kind of, I got some people that come there, they done been smoking 60, 70 years. They might not smoke now, but they still indulge in their cannabis. I love it, I ain't gonna lie, I love it. I like to smoke. Yes, I'm old school with mine. And no, I do not smoke blunts, because I am against tobacco. I smoke out of rolling paper zigzags. Whatever that dude, what's his name? Franz Borenstein, the zigzag man. I don't really like raw papers. I don't like them. I like the zigzag. Don't ask me why. I could taste my joint better. I could taste and smell it and everything better. Because with me, that's what it's about. I want to taste it. People don't understand. The whole thing, you could dab, you could get a pen, but it ain't nothing like sitting down, breaking a bud down, rolling it up, and lighting it. Yes, very therapeutic, very, very, very therapeutic. Like I said, the whole process of breaking it down and you talking with your partner like, yeah, woo, and there, it's a process. Joint, flower, the best. Whether you like a pipe or a bong, that's the best way, to me. High LBCA, I used to love that. We need to get that back too, man, the high LBCA. I don't care what we gotta do. If we gotta get out here and get on the pavement again, let's do it. Because that was I don't know why the city had it against it. I mean, people wasn't getting shot up, people wasn't fighting, people wasn't, everybody just wanted to go. We met good vendors. We met people, people got jobs through these things. You was getting education. They would set up the class. They would, teach you about cannabis, have different people, business people come, how to get in the industry. It was just so much, it was a plethora of information. We need that back. High LBCA. You can always find me at Chronic, sitting at the front desk. Yeah, I will be there. I wear a mask. I got stickers on it. You know what I'm saying? I got my little face shield with stickers, and I'll be there smiling, greeting you. And also, you can follow me on ePhysis on Instagram.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Happy Saturday. Welcome back to another episode of BTL. Today, we are doing our community event. We're distributing backpacks in the North District, AOC 7, and the West Side. Today, we're over at Pool of Hopes, over in the north. We're doing our Census 2020. We're counting everyone, and we're getting school supplies to those kids in need. Check out this recap video.
My name is Stacy Louks. I'm a veteran entrepreneur in the cannabis industry, owned my own business for pretty much my entire adult life. The last 10 years of it have been in cannabis. I'm a very loyal Long Beach resident. I love my city. And I've been a member of LBCA when there was, I think, 5 of us back in 2011. Absolutely priceless for my business. Well, it was kind of a unique situation. We moved from Las Vegas, where we were real estate brokers, and in 2011, 2010, the market was very crappy in Vegas. So we had an opportunity to come to Long Beach and manage some dispensaries. So we moved here to do that, and then very quickly after that, they changed the ordinance, and all the dispensaries we were managing had to close. We had been just kind of playing around with edibles, learning about them, providing them to our facilities, and then it very quickly needed to become a business because we didn't have jobs anymore. So from that moment, we just started knocking on doors, and in the 215 era, we were in 450 clinics in just Southern California. 215 prior to Prop 64. So now, you know, it's this long process to get from concept to open doors. Back then it was a little bit easier. We did that for 2000 till 2017, closed down in 2018 to just focus on getting licensed and getting our facility built out. Going through the licensing process was literally like being pregnant for 2 years. I would say it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. But there's also a lot of achievement. It's a huge achievement. We were the first manufacturer open in Long Beach. We became the training facility for the health department, for the county and the city, for the fire department. So there was a lot of pride, I guess that's what it was, that, you know, it was a very, very hard, long process, but we did it right, and, you know, we got open. And then as a result of that, we were able to do some consulting after that because I'm a nerd, because I'm a regulations nerd. Not in any other category, but compliance and regulations, total nerd. The facility we had for TKO was literally top of the line. Beautiful facility, expensive facility, but beautiful facility. We spared no expense or time or energy to make it 100% compliant, from extractions to baking, and just overall the appearance of the facility. It was nice and clean, and they liked to see that we were following all the rules. All the signs were up, all the, you know, sign-in sheets were there, badges were there. Every inch of compliance was handled. To become the training facility for the health department and fire department and some other state agencies, it was flattering, and it was also reassuring that we're doing things right. My very first inspection from the state, obviously a little nervous, but I figured I'd cross all my T's, dotted all my I's. One of the inspectors comes in, and I show her my packaging, and I show her that on the innermost part is the compliance part, which so many people miss, that you have to label that. So just as an example, this woman who I had never met before from the state, from CWPH, she says, "Wait, stop." And she literally gives me a hug. She says, "I've never seen anybody get that right." So that from then on, we became their training facility. Sometimes we had 10, 15 inspectors in there learning how to go through our batch records, review all the other stuff that we were doing. And they were just phones out the whole time, taking pictures of all our signs. And, you know, so that, it was reassuring. It was good to have connections. If I need something answered from the CDPH, I usually get it answered within 2 minutes instead of 2 weeks. So it's nice to have those connections at the state level and also at the city level, because also at the city level, we've done some consulting. It is a very long history, me being a part of the LBCA. Literally, the first meeting I attended was in one of the board members' garages. And I think there literally was like 5 of us. Pretty sure people were smoking weed, it was like totally different than it is now. So then the growth of the LBCA just really exponentially grew as we were trying to get the ordinance passed. We put the ordinance into the city to legalize and let us reopen, and that took a few years to get done, but we were extremely involved in that, not only in the consulting with the city, being at the meetings, but also we sent our employees to work phones, we knocked doors, we did everything to get through that process, which we did, and it was an awesome, successful thing. And then being a part of the tax reduction movement as well has been really good. And it's amazing, everywhere I go, even if it's not in Long Beach, first question every time, "Are you a member of the LBCA?" My first meeting with the city before I started my build out, here's the building and fire and health, and these people don't even know me yet. Very first question, "Are you a member of the LBCA?" And the meeting was easy and short. I think the future of the cannabis industry is, what I see is we talk all the time about barriers to entry, and they're huge. And we can talk about it in a social equity frame, but also financially. That's why so many people have investors and not so many of them have smiles on their face anymore. Barrier to entry is you need $3 million and 3 attorneys or you're not going to get open. I mean, it's just a painful reality. Where I think the future's going, and that's why where I'm going, is I believe that contract manufacturing and white labeling for the cannabis industry is the way to go. You can have 25 brands under one roof with one license and one compliance officer and one CFO and all those things, instead of having one brand, and you still need to fill all those roles. You still need to file this many compliance reports and this many renewals. So the barrier to entry, if someone in this room wants to make a peanut butter chocolate chip cookie, they don't have to build out $1 million plus kitchen to do it. They come to us, we work on formulations, we have food scientists on staff, we have chefs on staff. So we take from concept to retail, and we do all the compliance and all the regulation work for them. And it just allows somebody to very quickly enter the industry, whether it's in the flower, jarring, pre-roll, or in baked goods, or in topicals. We are set up to do all of those things, and we take everything over for you. You don't have to build out kitchens. You will never have a health inspector at your house. Take all that responsibility for you. That's where I think the industry is going. For my world, which is manufacturing, that's where I think it's going. There's so many things, like, for example, when you're talking about compliance, there are so many roles. I had more executives at my previous job than I had workers in the kitchen, because it was that much, and high paid people to handle all the compliance and handle all the batch records and handle metric and handle all that stuff, instead of having one set of C-level executives and then your crew and your staff, and you have a chance then. That's where I think the future of the industry is going. We're seeing more educated workers. There's classes being taught now. There's classes within the LBCA that are being taught, educational opportunities out in the community that LBCA does, as well as a new course that's being introduced at the Long Beach Community College, which I'm very proud to say that I'm one of the instructors for. Very, very exciting. That it's groundbreaking that a college is going to let us come in and teach about cannabis. 800 people within the first couple days of the class being announced went in to try and enroll in this class. So it's interesting to see the people that are enrolling, the demographic of the people that are enrolling, the incredible amount of time that's been put into the curriculum, so that it's stating regulations, it's stating compliance information, taking it from soup to nuts about how much equipment costs and why it's so important that they take care of it. So we're bringing in now a workforce that knows this isn't McDonald's. This isn't a backhouse trim factory. This is a real business. In fact, I don't even think they need to necessarily have cannabis experience for manufacturing anyway. Cannabis experience, or even be someone who partakes, because what we need is the skill at the level that they're at, whether it's growing, manufacturing. For me, I need factory workers, I need C-level people that know how to do that kind of stuff. We're seeing that drastically now. It used to be very difficult for me to find employees. It's not. Overrun with them now, once they know you're running a professional outfit. Oh, I think it's awesome. The name of the company that I'm going to work for is Anana Manufacturing, and that actually stands for the strength of a woman. It's a woman-owned business. Almost every one of the executives are female. I think being a woman in this industry I think people respect it. I mean, maybe I'm being naive, but it's so rare. And from what I read recently, the executives in cannabis, the females now outnumber the males as far as the executive level. So I'm very proud to be in the cannabis industry and be a woman. I shout it from the rooftops. Sometimes it throws people off a little bit, but women are making a difference in this industry. They really are. There's a ton of advocacy groups. And I can tell you, even in the LBCA, I was the first woman, and I was the only woman for quite a while. But now I'd say it's probably about 50-50 even in the LBCA. There's so many women entering this industry because there's so many smart women that want to get a hold of an entrepreneurial idea and take it, and we're tough. We can do 2 years of pregnancy that it takes to get licensed. We can handle that stuff. So for me, I love the fact that there's so many women in the industry, and I love that I'm in this industry. My name is Stacy Louks. I am a industry entrepreneur for the last 10 years. I am now taking a different path into white label and contract manufacturing within the industry. With Anana Manufacturing. You can reach us at our website at ananamfg.com. Thank you, guys.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of At the Root of It. I'm your host, Stephen Contreras, and today I have a very special guest for At the Root of It. It's my dear friend, Eric with Veterans Cannabis Coalition. How are you doing today, brother? How's everything?
Great, Stephen. How are you? Thank you. Great.
Appreciate
Doing good. Thank you for taking the time to join us. This has been in the works for a little while. Tell everyone a little bit about what you do and what VCC is all about.
Sure. So, I'm an advocate. I advocate on veterans and cannabis issues and all the things that connect to that, which are quite a few. And part of that advocacy means both doing grassroots organizing, which I do mostly in Southern California, as well as federal lobbying, which I do with my partner, Bill Ferguson. And the federal lobbying aspect involves essentially trying to gather support or create support in Congress for various pieces of legislation. Our primary bill that we've been pushing the last couple of years has been the VA Medicinal Cannabis Research Act, which has since passed House Committee, but looks like it's probably not going to make it through this year. But we're also a part of, and I can announce this now because this just happened yesterday. We're now also a part of the Marijuana Justice Coalition, which includes the ACLU, NORML, Drug Policy Alliance, and a lot of the other organizations that are all pushing for legalization, and especially legalization that I think is grounded more so, in the needs of like patients and average Americans rather than, specifically like something that would benefit commercial interests above all.
Exactly. That's awesome. So what has that journey been like coming from your veteran background, hopping into cannabis, hopping into the policy side? Because a lot of people tend to forget that with cannabis there's policy, and with policy there's cannabis and legislation and everything like that. So what was that experience like?
So I'm a veteran, as you said. I served in the Army for 7 years. I did 2 tours in Iraq. I did 1 in the Philippines. I worked as a defense contractor in Afghanistan for a year. And after all that was said and done, which was about an 8-year period, I returned home, which was for me Southern California. I went back to school, Long Beach Community College, ended up transferring out of LBCC to UC Berkeley, where I finished my degree in political science. And then from there, went to DC, where I kind of worked my way up as a 30-year-old intern, through internship at a think tank, to working as a legislative staffer in the Senate, to working as an assistant director at the American Legion, which is the nation's largest wartime veteran association. And throughout that period, basically, I was doing like policy analysis work, and I guess what I would call like program management. And all throughout, it was doing veterans and national security issues. It was at my time at the Legion that I basically got into drug policy, which brought me to cannabis, because I saw, this is going back into late 2016. The opioid epidemic was even sharper, I think. It's never not been, it's actually gotten worse since then, but it seemed like the public was more focused on the opioid epidemic a few years ago. And at that time, I was trying to figure out ways for the American Legion to get involved in that conversation, because it was such a important conversation in the veterans community, because so many veterans were being treated with opioids as a way to manage chronic pain and acute pain deriving from, either other conditions or wartime, essentially conditions or illnesses related to their military service. So from opioids, right? Once you start digging into like how people are treating themselves, it's a very quick step into cannabis, because so many veterans who had gotten off of opioids had basically done so with the use of cannabis. And not only had they gotten off opioids, but they had gotten off their antidepressants, their anti-anxiety meds, antipsychotics, the entire cocktail of pharmaceutical medications that both the Department of Veterans Affairs and private health really like to push on people who have complex injuries, which so many veterans do. And the thing about veterans, of course, is that, PTSD, chronic pain, traumatic brain injuries, right? These are not unique to the veteran community. And what we saw in the veteran community was reflected, across the entire population, right? If you have access to medical care, right? And if you present certain symptoms, your doctor is going to give you pills, more than likely. They might recommend therapies, but what they can give you right now, as you exit that meeting, right, is a script for a prescription. And that became really the front line and the only treatment that so many veterans got. Both, and I don't want to single out the Department of Veterans Affairs, because only about a third of veterans receive their health care there, but the veteran suicide rate, I think, is essentially a reflection of the fact that veterans are so over-medicated. they are given, these cocktails of medications without evidence, right? An individual antidepressant might be one thing, but mixed with, gabapentin and the benzodiazepine and right, and it just basically continues to build, and they'll they'll cut you off some drugs, or they'll increase your dosage or reduce your dosage of others, and it's just, how does anyone ever really get healthy like that? And the result is it's very difficult, if not impossible. I don't want to say that there's no use for any of these drugs that I've mentioned in all our conversation here, of course, but they definitely do not work in synergistically. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Now,
I agree.
As we both as cannabis advocates, right? Like, we both understand that is not the case with cannabis, right?
Exactly.
It is to our great benefit, something that sort of out of the box works for a lot of people for a lot of different things. Now, why it works and how it works, right? We're still learning more every day about that. But the end result of all this is that veterans were faced with an issue that people said they care about, right? Suicide and overdose. We had identified a pretty reasonable driver of suicide and overdose that was basically not even mentioned in Congress. Like, I sat through multiple, hearings on veteran suicide, and occasionally, like, they might bring up opioids, for example, right? But for the most part, there's no understanding of this idea that it's not just opioids, right? It's not just A or B, it's A, B, C, D, and how all these things are being used together, and how often they are being prescribed in this manner. That's the reality that veterans face. That's the reality that millions of other Americans who use, the healthcare system face, and their outcomes are terrible for the most part. But for those who discovered cannabis, that became not just like an exit from these toxic and addictive pharmaceuticals, but a substitute and an actual and a medicine, right? Something that they could use that relieved their pain, allowed them to sleep, do all of these things that they provide relief that they couldn't find on the pills that they were prescribed. SB 34, I think, is a big step forward, right? And it's something that happened because of advocates in the state. We were very lightly involved. That it was mostly the work of a lot of Bay Area advocates, Sweet Leaf Collective, Weed for Warrior Project, Operation EVAC, and a lot of their industry supporters in the Bay Area, basically working with Senator Scott Wiener, came up with the idea of, it doesn't incentivize necessarily cannabis licensees to donate, but it removes the disincentive that existed under the previous system, right? Yes. So prior to SB 34 going into effect in March of this year, if you wanted to donate cannabis as a cannabis licensee, you had to pay, depending on where you're donating in the pipeline, essentially, you had to pay, the cultivation, excise, and use tax, which, at the legal rates, that, that creates a pretty marked increase over, your just basic cost of production, which, you're not being incentivized in any way, and you're actually being penalized. So with removal of the tax collection on compassionate donations, and especially the organizational abilities of a group like, LBCA, right? There's a way now for the licensed industry to participate in a way that I think aligns with the intent behind legalization, right? Which was, this is medicine. We're at this point in 2020 because, cancer and AIDS patients, and the SB 34 is named after two of the most influential advocates in the state. Dennis Perone, who was a gay Vietnam vet, and Brownie Mary Rathbun, who was a nurse who baked cannabis brownies and would provide those to free of charge to cancer and AIDS patients who really had both a lack of medicinal alternatives, right, other than like chemo and radiation, and even then that was far less advanced in 96, obviously, than it was today. And AIDS, which at that time and still today, right, it's a major killer in a lot of communities. Far more so than, and there were obviously far fewer treatments available than there are today. However, right, that being, these were people who were struggling in a very visible way, that had few opportunities to find something that worked for them, and they were being criminalized if they chose to use cannabis. So like, that's why we're here today, right? We're here because of compassion. So SB 34 is in line with that, and LBCA, I think, seizing on the opportunity to use their influence in a very big city in the state, in I think one of the best organized, industry, local government not partnerships necessarily, but well, I mean, I guess it is a partnership, right? You have to work with the city, to get to come to understandings about like what's working, what's not, right? And having that open conversation, like every other business sector, with local government is essential. So yes, you're working with local government, you're working with cannabis licensees, we've all identified that there's a massive problem right now in the state with accessibility and affordability of cannabis, which is one of the reasons why the illicit market has, still dominates the overall, cannabis marketplace in the state, right? Like from my last time I looked at it, the estimates were the state market was about, the legal market was about three plus billion, and the illicit market was another 5 plus, or excuse me, maybe 8 plus, right? So, it's and that's because patients, especially who are the biggest consumers of cannabis, are also the most price sensitive. And, a lot of patients have been priced out of the legal market. They just can't afford, $300 ounces of flower that they were, prior were at least able to get like 120 out the door, right? Now with taxes and, a lot of costs being passed down to the consumer, that has become, it has become a luxury for some people. And for people who use it as a medicine, it's become unaffordable.
We've lost the compassion and compassion care.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's for sure. So it's super nice to bring it back. With November right around the corner, in your experience in Washington, why is it important to vote? And then why is it important to actually lobby?
I mean, it's one of your basic rights, right? It is in the First Amendment, your right to petition the government for redress of grievances. So what does that mean? It means basically if you see that something that you don't agree with, you have the right, and it's protected by the Constitution, by the Bill of Rights, to go and talk to your elected your elected representatives, and to basically, make your case. And people in the cannabis, cannabis patients, I mentioned Normal earlier, they're just celebrating their 50th anniversary. So at least since 1970, there have been people basically making the case for cannabis in DC and in states around the country. And that's why we have 47 states now that have some exception to the Controlled Substances Act, which basically puts them in violation of the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, which means that, this is a lot of federal law has already been nullified in a real way. However, we still are dealing with the fact that cannabis is a Schedule I drug, meaning that it has no recognized medical use, and it has a high potential for abuse, and is the most restrictive category of drug in the United States, along with drugs like heroin, as well as psychedelics like, mushrooms. So there's a lot of inconsistency into, how drugs are scheduled, which is a bigger issue, but
yes.
Essentially,
Agreed.
while the federal government continues to schedule cannabis, we're going to be dealing with issues as far as what our rights are. So that's why it's so important for people to vote, because just as we have in California, we have Prop 64, we have Prop 215, because people went out and voted, right? And they voted for these propositions, and that's why we have laws today that enable us to have the single largest cannabis market in the world. That's something. We should, I think, take pride in the fact that we have, I think, led the nation in recognizing that cannabis is a medicine. And I think we will also lead the nation in this, in this last stretch toward legalization, because, we have the people, we have the culture, we have the money. It's not really in the right places yet, but the money is here, at least in California, and among people who support this issue. Just think about that, right? Like right now, there are no cannabis voters. The politicians don't really have to answer for their cannabis positions one way or another, largely because there have not been that many bills that have come through Congress. So going back to the Marijuana Justice Coalition, the MORE Act. The MORE Act is currently working its way to a House floor vote, right? So the Marijuana Justice Coalition is pushing to have the MORE Act go to a floor vote in September, which means that the entire House of Representatives will have the opportunity to vote on the basics of legalization. The MORE Act is not, of course, probably going to be what the end-all be-all of federal legalization is going to look like, because there's so many more negotiations that have to happen, and it's probably, and more than likely not going to make it through the Senate in the time that we have left this year, based on the majority leader. But what we can do, but what we have is the opportunity to move the process along, right? Votes are so important on this issue because they're so rare. So last year we saw a vote on the Safe Banking Act, which is an incredibly important piece of legislation for the industry. And that put a lot of members of the House, at least, on the board. And it said, on the very basic aspects of cannabis banking, of allowing, state legal businesses to do, use normal business services, essentially, right? How do you, where are you, right? And that was overwhelmingly in favor. I think you had, over 300 plus members of a 435 member body voting in favor of safe banking. Now, is legalization going to carry the day like that? Probably not, right? Like, we understand legalization is a lot further than safe banking. However, again, still very important to have that happen at all, just so we can, especially as advocates, so we know where to send our messaging. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Who should we be spending our time? Who has to be convinced? Because in all of this, just remember, Congress is 535 members, 100 senators, 435 House representatives. Of the people who, let's say, the leadership, and not to denigrate other members, but let's just be real, like, people who matter, right? The people who are going to decide what legislation moves out of committee, what legislation goes to the floor of each chamber, there are not that many. There are about maybe 20 plus. And they're known people. These aren't, we know who they are, we know where they live, we know what their interests are for the most part. So when we look to this long game of, like, how are we going to get to legalization, you're going to have to change those people's minds. Senate Majority Leader, whoever that is, the Speaker of the House, whoever that is, the President, obviously, right? And then the people that are, closest to those people as well, right? Those are the ones who are ultimately controlling whether we get legalization and the shape of legalization itself, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's still an unknown, right? We don't really know what it's going to look like yet, because we haven't even really gotten to that point in the discussion. We're still just trying to set goalposts, really, and establish that this is what we want to, this is where we want to get to. And, politics is the art of compromise, and, and this is definitely probably going to be one of those issues that you see compromise around. However, that, I think, is more of a reason to just keep on it, because if you want it to look like what we want it to look like, and people have different perspectives on that, right? But what I wanted to see, maximal patient protections, right? Maximal, individual rights. It's a plant. It should be treated the same way. Like, the government doesn't come and say, hey, I have an interest in how much wheat you can grow, and, whether you distill it or turn it into, like, malt and then brew with it, and, how much you use for non-commercial purposes, right? Like, the government doesn't take that position, at least not with craft brewing anymore. Right? Although I know state by state that has actually been some challenges. But the bigger picture is, like, we establish that, we acknowledge that like, the government doesn't take an interest in so many other things, and cannabis is like so many other things. It is not. Yes. It is exceptional in what it can do. It is not exceptional in the risk it poses to society or individuals. And in reality, we understand that if we could somehow get everyone to substitute cannabis for alcohol and tobacco, that's 550,000 plus associated deaths in this country every year. What would the harm reduction look like to push people into a substance that not only is not going to take, decades off your life, or, put you in an early grave, but, potentially, create a pretty therapeutic benefit for you, right? There's really nothing that we have on the table, medicinally in our, in our food system that we can really say that about. So, I think that's why this is something that, no matter how the cards fall politically, right, we have to keep our eye on what the bigger picture is. Passion, individual rights and liberty, protections from, state interference and violence. I think everybody can get behind those.
It's a long journey ahead. We have a lot to do, but like you said, we have to stay consistent. But I want to say thank you so much, Eric, for joining us. For everyone who's watching, where can they find you? Where can they find out about all the organizations you're involved with, and how can they reach you? Sure.
So we're on all the social media channels. Our main handle is on Instagram, and Facebook is both the same, at Veterans Cannabis Coalition. Our website is www.veteranscannacoalition.org. If you'd like to participate in any of our calls to action right now, we have one for the MORE Act. So if you'd like to contact your member of Congress, and we basically created some pre-formatted letters that you can use. Text VCC to 52886. You'll get a link. Follow the link. Enter your zip code. It'll route you to your representative and your senators. And you can choose to send a pre-formatted message expressing your support for legalization. Yeah, and those are just I think a few of the top ways to get involved. But obviously, vote. Talk to people about this issue. Do what you can, because it's when you hear how many people, especially powerful people, whose minds have been changed because someone in their family or friends network basically said, hey, cannabis worked for me. I had cancer. I didn't tell you at the time that I was using this because I didn't know what you feel, but it did. And now that person suddenly becomes far more open-minded to the idea not only of cannabis as medicine, but they're on the way to legalization.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today at The Root of It. You have a good one.
I appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you so much.